Grace, mercy, and peace to you from God the Father, from our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. Text for today is our our epistle lesson from 1 Peter, particularly these words. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So today, as we look at this lesson from Peter, he's going to do some hopping around through some metaphors that all revolve around a stone, being a stone. And at the heart of it, he's going to make the point that Christ is our cornerstone on which our faith rests. But as he's doing this, as he's making a way through this kind of explanation, he's also counting on or expecting his readers to be kind of familiar with the stone imagery that takes place in the Old Testament as well. So he'll come along here in chapter 2, starting verse 4, and he'll say this, "And you come to him, a living stone, rejected by men, but in the sight of God chosen and precious. You yourselves are like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ." And so what he's doing is he's using this picture of this, a metaphor of what it means to be a living stone. And I believe what's happening is that he's actually referring to the practice in the Old Testament of what is called standing stones, right? And so there's lots of instances that we come across this. For example, when Jacob wrestled with God, he erected this standing stone as a memorial to it. And I want to tell you the story of one of these to kind of give you a little bit of a background on it, right? So I want to talk about the story of the children of Israel when they're crossing the Jordan. So if you're not familiar with this story, this takes place after the Exodus. God has led through Moses his people out of the wilderness, or out of Exodus, and now he set them free, but they go to Mount Sinai, and while Moses is up getting the 10 Commandments, the people get bored and they decide to make a golden calf. And they end up worshiping that golden calf, and God punishes them for it. And one of the punishments is that none of them are going to live long enough to enter into the promised land, right? And so they wander around in the wilderness, the desert, for 40 years. Once all of them have passed away, now even Moses has passed away, and Joshua is leading them. And now he's going to lead them across the Jordan River and into what's called the promised land, or Canaan. And in order to prepare them to do this, he kind of makes a ritual of it. He tells them that he wants the Ark of the Covenant to go first, all the people to go behind, and they're to walk up to the River Jordan. And you might expect that he would say, and I'm going to stop all the water, and then you get to walk across. But in fact, what he actually says is he tells the priests that they have to take a step first. So they actually have to step. You might even call it a leap of faith, a step of faith first. And when they step, then God stops the water so that they can cross over on dry land. And what's kind of cool about this is, if you think about it, is that none of those people who are about to experience that was alive for the Red Sea event, right? And so it's almost like he's creating another one for this round of people, so that they know that they can trust him, that he's going to lead them. So that's exactly what happens. They walk up, they take a step, stops the water, they all start walking across. And there was, people have estimated maybe even 1 million of the Israelites at this point, right? There are a large number of them. So it takes a long time for them to cross the Jordan. And God is keeping the water, as it said, piled up so they can get across. Now, what's interesting is after they've gotten across, God gives them some specific instructions, and we come across this in Joshua chapter 4. God tells Joshua to tell the people this. He says, "Cross over before the ark of the Lord your God in the midst of the Jordan, and each one of you take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of tribes of the children of Israel." How many tribes were there? 12. You guys are good, yeah. So 12 stones, that this may be a sign among you when your children ask in the time to come, saying, "What do these stones mean to you?" Then you shall answer them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. And so what he does is as the ark is in the middle and the water is stopped, people keep crossing over, and he says he wants one person from each tribe to take a big rock, a big stone out of there, and they're going to erect this monument, this standing stone, right? And it's supposed to stay there forever. And as Joshua says, what's supposed to happen is, years later, the family's on a road trip, they're going to Disneyland, they drive by, right? And the kids are like, "What is this pile of rocks here? What's this standing stone?" And the grandpa in the car goes, "Well, let me tell you about the day that God..." Right? And so he tells the story, and it's supposed to be a reminder, right? A physical reminder that they can see that God has been faithful. And so what's kind of cool about this is God does something kind of interesting. So if you go to the Holy Land, you can see still stones like this that are erected some places, and you also see some that are kind of like that. We're not sure which kind this was in this story, but we just know that they took the 12 and they erected these stones. Now, what's kind of interesting is that this was actually a pagan practice in the land of Canaan. Lots of times when they would go and worship Baal or Asherah out on some hill or mountain, they would erect a stone to do that. And so what's interesting is that God is telling the children of Israel to take this practice, but to then make it dedicated to Him, right? He says, this will be a memorial so you remember the great things I've done. And as I told you, I've done it other places. He did it. Jacob did it after he wrestled with God. There's a couple other places. In fact, I want to tell you about one more of them, one of my favorites, but I got to do a little setup for this. So this is some years later where the children of Israel have actually entered into the promised land, and they have begun to chase out the nations that live there, the Canaanites and the Philistines and others, but they only did it partway. They actually got kind of tired of fighting, and so some of these peoples have stuck around. And in fact, the Israelites are so tired of fighting that the next time they go to war with the Philistines, they're like, it's God who leads us into battle, right? They always take the Ark of the Covenant, and it leads them in battle. They're like, how about we just stay home, we'll just send the Ark. For real. So they just send the ark to go into battle. So, surprise, God did not like this sort of misuse of his power. So he let the Philistines capture the Ark of the Covenant. So they take it to one of their towns and they put it in one of their temples in front of one of their idols. And they have this really big, tall idol of their god. And it was common in that day that you would, if you captured, defeated another nation, you would take one of their holy things, put in your temple as a sign that it now served your God, right? It's in there. But every morning when they wake up, the god has fallen on down face first in front of the ark. And they set it back up, and they wake up the next morning, and it's happened again. And then, people say God doesn't have a sense of humor. This is one of my favorite Bible stories. So, in your English Bible, if you read this, it says that God gave them, everybody in that town, boils. But it's being nice. The Hebrew word is it's hemorrhoids. So God gives the entire town of Philistines hemorrhoids. I mean, you can't make this up. This is so awesome. So God gives them all these hemorrhoids. And so they wake up, their gods, they face down in front of it, they put it back up, they wake up, they got hemorrhoids. They're like, enough is enough. So they actually take the ark and they take it back to Israel. They hook it up between these ox and they send them off. In fact, when they get there, they unhook the ox and then sacrifice them. So how'd you like that job? You're like, hey, I was just, delivering it, but whatever. So they make this big sacrifice, they have this big party, and then Samuel tells them, let's erect a standing stone. Let's put one of these standing stones up to mark this occasion. So Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mitzvah and Shen, and he called its name Ebenezer, for he said, till now has the Lord helped us. Ebenezer. So you thought that was just some Scroogey guy's name, didn't you? Yeah, no, Ebenezer literally means in Hebrew, thus far as the Lord helped us, or till now the Lord has helped us. In fact, this has kind of become a thing in our family. When Julie and I got married, one of the hymns we had in it was Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. You know that hymn? And the second line in it is, Here I raise my Ebenezer. You can help me sing, I'm not that good at it. You can join in. Yeah. So here I raise my Ebenezer. So we were talking about it at a family dinner not long after that. And my grandma asked the question. She goes, well, what's an Ebenezer? And or somebody asked that, and Grandma's like, well, it sounds like a toast. Here I raise my Ebenezer, right? It sounds like a toast. So that actually has become, that's the Jacoby family toast. If you're ever with us, before we're partaking of a beverage and we have a toast, we say Ebenezer, because it means, thus far has the Lord been with us. So this is all background to suggest to you that what Paul does is he comes along, or Peter does, is he comes along and he says to the people who receive his letter, he says, you are living standing stones. You are meant to be testimonies to what God has done. You're supposed to be, wherever it is that you are in the world, people are supposed to come across you and marvel, right, at what God has done. And if you stop and think about it, that's kind of an amazing thing, right? That he's claiming that we are actually these stones, right? These living testimonies to what God has done. And then he'll go on and he'll change kind of his metaphor. He's still using these stones or rocks, but then he'll move to the idea that then when God takes all of us together collectively, he builds us up into his spiritual temple. So all these living testimonies, all these living stones become this spiritual temple, this thing that is representing God in the world. And then he'll go on and talk about how Christ is the cornerstone of that temple. But he'll move on and he'll say this. He'll say, you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people of his own possession. So I just want to kind of stop there for a second. So again, Peter's original readers, with their background in the Old Testament, would know exactly what he's talking about, right? The chosen race is the Israelites, because remember when God calls Abraham and says, I'm going to be your God, you're going to be my people, right? And so they always thought of themselves as special, as set apart. And God is coming along now and is saying, no, you are my chosen race. You're my special people, right? My royal priesthood. The nation of Israel was supposed to be a witness to the world. And he says, now you're going to be, as a group of people, a witness, a people of my own possession. Then he says this, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, right? And so what's kind of cool about this is he's saying, when the world looks at you, it's going to know how awesome I am. Now, if you stop and think about it, that's kind of a double-sided thing, right? Because on the one hand, it's supposed to say, God used you, right? Someone who's broken and fallible and full of mistakes and loses their temper and does all these sorts of things, right, that you're not supposed to do. That God takes these broken and imperfect people, just like you and me, people that are not perfect, that don't follow all of his commands, that don't always do what we're supposed to do. He takes us and he says, no, you're one of my own. And now we become a witness and a testimony to the world of what God is doing. And he says, you're going to proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. This picture that says, that's not who we were anymore, right? We used to wander around, not know what we're doing, chasing after the wisdom of the world, chasing the things the world told us. But now God has called us out of that and placed us into his light. And he ends with one of my favorite verses. He says, once you were not a people, but now you're God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. As I mentioned earlier, today is our senior send-off, so we're going to send off our high school graduates as God shows them wherever it is they're going, whether it's college, military, work, wherever it might be. And I was thinking about this, and I don't think I've ever put it this way, but I decided to say it this way today. So one of the things we're actually doing today, I don't know if you're familiar with, for example, the Mormon Church. Everybody, when they graduate from high school, has to go on a mission trip. Did you know that? You're supposed to do a mission trip. We do that too. Did you know that? Every one of our graduates, when they come up here, are going on a mission trip. Right? Wherever it is that God is sending them, that's what Peter is saying to each of us. But he's saying that, I want to specifically have our seniors think about it. God is saying to you, you're going to be his living testimony in this world. Wherever he's sending you to school, wherever he's sending you to work, military, whatever it is, the people that you will now come in contact with now that you're not always in your parents' home, but you're someplace else, you're going to be a living testimony. You're going to be a testimony to them of how awesome God is. And on the face of it, it seems like it could be sort of intimidating, right? In fact, you might be thinking, I better get my catechism out so I can answer all those questions again. But guess what? That's not what it's going to be about. Peter tells us what it's going to be about. It's going to be your opportunity to tell to the world about what it was to be in darkness, but now to walk in light. To not be a people, but now to actually be God's people. You're going to be able to tell them and share with them what it's like to have received God's mercy. Because it won't be about how much you know and which Bible stories and all that sort of thing, whether you can debate people into faith or anything like that. Peter says you're just supposed to be a living testimony, a reminder that proclaims to the world the tremendous mercy of God. Amen.